back, fellow babies, to Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. If you're watching as a Patreon patron or as a YouTube subscriber, thank you so much for your support. If you're watching for free on YouTube a week late, at a minimum, all of you, please link your Twitch Prime account to your Amazon Prime account, because Amazon will pay us for the privilege. It costs you nothing. And the instructions are in the show description below. Remember, you have to re-up this about every month. So, just please go down and re-link it if you haven't done so in a while, because we'll get a couple of bucks for nothing. It costs you nothing. Question from Patreon from Tarma. Certain parts of the entertainment industry, specifically those involving movies and TV shows, are cutting back significantly on the content they're creating. Is a cut like this likely for the gaming industry? Has it already happened? It seems like we got far fewer games, big budget game releases than we did just 10 years ago. Yeah, it happened years and years and years ago in games. The premise for that question, though, we have more scripted television series created now than we have ever had in history, and by 3x. So we were 150 scripted TV shows in 2010, and we're over 500 now in the US. So does that drop from 500 to 480? Maybe. I don't even know how you count it anymore. My guess is not. I think that you'll end up with more quantity and lower cost. So I think what you're actually seeing is Netflix figuring out that it was really dumb to spend $130 million on The Irishman, which was fine, but fine. So they had, of their 220 million subscribers, 100 million of them watched it for 2 hours. So they got 200 million hours of consumption for $130 million. Not worth it. And I think that they would much rather make smaller movies. So where they're cutting back is, I think they make fewer movies with The Rock and Gal Gadot and Ryan Reynolds, and more movies with Sandra Bullock or somebody who doesn't cost as much. She's probably a couple $1 million for a picture, where The Rock is like 20. So I don't think they're making fewer TV shows, but what they're going to do is they're going to make more Korean language TV shows and translate them. They announced they're making 25 of those. So I don't see that. But on the game side, I remember this vividly, back in 2004, because I am that old, EA went from making 49 different games to making 70 by 2007, and they lost their ass. And they've gone from 49 titles to 70 titles to about a dozen. So yes, the number of games dropped. And back in 2004, I think Acclaim was still public, but they may have just gone bankrupt. But BAM Entertainment, 3DO, Interplay, Acclaim, THQ, Midway, Atari, IDOS were all independent companies, and none of them are anymore. I mean, Atari's back because somebody bought it out of bankruptcy, but all those guys are gone. So, I don't know how many games they each made, but a dozen or more. So you are down way over 100 games a year from where we were back in 2007. Way over 100, we're probably down to a quarter as many games as we used to have. And so yes, and what happened was that companies like Activision realized that better to put your resources in Call of Duty and sell 20 million copies every year than Tony Hawk and James Bond and Spider-Man selling 5 million copies. I mean, it just made more sense to leverage it over a much bigger investment, and they did. So yeah, it already happened. And fewer big budget releases than we did just 10 years ago. That's more because companies went away than anything else. I think that as EA got religion and made fewer and fewer, so did Ubisoft, so did the Japanese companies. So yes, I mean, it's the same in the movie industry. If you look at theatrical releases, back in 2002, I believe the 7 major studios released over 200 titles, 200 big budget releases. And in 2012, that number was 130. So it dropped by a third. Obviously, the pandemic impacted everything. But because of the consolidation we've seen in the industry, like Disney buying Fox, and now Warner Brothers and Discovery being part of the same thing, you're probably going to be down, Disney Fox for sure, down 10 or 15 titles from what they were producing before. And far more Star Wars and Avengers or Marvel, and far less Rob Lowe romantic comedies. So yeah, bigger budget, bigger proposition, and fewer titles overall. My guess is when we return to normal in 23, 24, we'll be 110, down, but still a lot, but roughly half of what we had 20 years ago. And they're bigger production. Now, that doesn't mean that movie stars aren't employed. There are a lot of movies that are direct to streaming service, and there are a lot of TV opportunities. So I mentioned Rob Lowe because he went from being a movie star to being a TV actor. And he's been on like 10 TV shows. He was on The West Wing, and he's now doing one of those 911 shows, Lone Star 911, I don't know what the show's called. But he's on one of those he plays the Texan. I can't figure it out. But I think it's Lone Star. I think he's in that one. Anyway, and he was in The Grinder, which I thought was really great. It got canceled after 1 year. So the stars of movies that used to make romantic comedies have nothing to do now. Whatever happened to John Cusack? Remember him?
I think a lot of them just moved to TV, Netflix.
I haven't seen John Cusack on TV.
A lot of those old movie stars.
But what's his name? Jason Bateman? Yeah. Ozark. Yeah.
His career is thriving.
Yeah, but he was kind of a romantic comedy movie star, and I mean he was in like Horrible Bosses and stuff. I mean he's been in those kind of movies. He still makes them. But even Seth Rogen, who was all movies all the time, he's like got a production credit on Boys, and I think on Preacher, which isn't on anymore. Yeah, so I'm saying like, no, because they don't really make as many of those $50 million kind of films. Don't make sense.
I just don't think rom-coms and comedies are in theaters much anymore.
No, because
people are like, I can watch them on my TV and it's no different.
Yeah, so I think the answer, and this is a question you didn't ask, but I think streaming changed the equation, and the streaming services all need content, so that they've kind of pushed TV shows to there, and that's why we have 500 shows, because they're not all on broadcast TV, obviously. And they're changing the equation for movies too, and I think that'll happen in games. So the streaming services are going to need more content, and the question is, do they buy old IP and remaster it? And you get guys like Shane excited about the entirely new Resident Evil 4, because that was a great game. But he's not excited about Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. So anyway, I think that the equation is changing with business model change, and we'll see what happens. Thank you guys who are Patreon patrons. Thank you YouTube subscribers. Thank all of you who have Twitch Prime accounts and link them to your Amazon Prime account. All of those are ways that Shane gets support and can keep the shows coming. And if you can't do any of those things, then at least follow me on Twitter. You're still getting the content a week late, but I will engage with you on Twitter unless you're but I probably won't. We'll see you next time.